Hi, my name is Scott Carroll, and I'm the owner of Carroll Property Services. My first language is French, and I love playing chess and cooking delicious food for the people I love. I also love the planet and all the plants and animals that live on it, which is why I've made it my goal to restore our local ecology by designing native plant gardens. Native plants are accustomed to our climate, which means they take less resources to keep them alive. There's also native plants such as tall grasses that are very effective at storing carbon in the soil thanks to their deep, dense, and fibrous root structures. But my favorite part about native plants is that they provide better shelter and more valuable food sources for local wildlife. Wildlife ponds have the added benefit of providing water for drinking and bathing. Some animals, like toads and dragonflies, also rely on ponds for breeding and hibernating. Adding a wildlife pond to your garden will attract all kinds of wildlife and bring your landscape one step closer to its natural state. Now let's look at how to build one.
This is day one of the pond build, and we just laid out some hose to get a general idea for the size and shape of the pond. And we're just removing the sod, and then we'll get to digging the pond. This part takes a while, but my video guy Alex said I don't need to say anything for this part, so I'm just watching the grass come out. I hate grass. And here I'm piling some of the dirt around the back of the pond, just because the pond is built on a slope. So that side of the pond was a bit lower, and we want it to be level so that it can be filled up completely with water. I'm just tamping it down so that it doesn't sink later and ruin the pond. And we want the pond to be at least 2 feet deep in the middle, and here I realized that we weren't going to be able to do that with the size of the pond, so I'm just making it a little bit wider here. And I think we do that once more. And here I'm just digging out some different levels in the pond, because we have some plants like lilies and hornwort that like the deep parts, and other plants like irises and arrowheads that prefer a little bit shallower areas. Like I said, the pond needs to be 2 feet deep, and actually a little bit deeper. The hole needs to be deeper because we're going to lose some of that depth after we put the liner in. And it needs to be 2 feet deep so that toads can hibernate at the bottom without the pond freezing completely over. Here I tried to seal the pond with clay, but the clay content in the soil was not nearly high enough, so we ended up having to use the pond liner, as I kind of expected, but I just wanted to try this in case it worked. It would have been cool to have a more natural pond. Here we're putting some underlay. This is just fleece or landscaping fabric, and that's just to protect the plastic pond liner from any sharp rocks or twigs that might puncture it. And here's the pond liner, and that's just going to hold in all the water. It's actually made of a special material that apparently is good for the plants to root into, so it's a little extra bonus there. And we're putting an overlay as well, because we are going to be adding some rocks over top of it, and again, we don't want the pond liner to break. And here I'm creating a well in the middle using rocks, just to make sure that the dirt doesn't flow down and fill up the middle, because we want to keep that 2-foot depth. So every time I add a layer of rocks here, I'm adding some soil as well, just to make sure they're nice and snug and stable and they don't move around. I used more rocks than I thought for the well, and so I ended up having to get more rocks for around the edges. And here we're just putting some soil in, because we are going to be planting plants in here, so they need soil, and it also hides the liner. Some of these rocks are really more just for looks than anything. And soon it's going to cut forward a bit, because I was waiting on a delivery of river rocks, and I didn't want my video guy Alex to sit around all day waiting for the delivery. So he went home and I put in all the river rock, and then the next day he showed up to film me putting in the plants. And here we are putting in the hornwort in the middle, and that's what's going to oxygenate the water and filter out some of the particles. There's also a lily down there that you can't really see. And then around the edges we have irises and cattails and blue rushes and arrowheads and pickerel weeds. And I got some more plants that you'll see in the final product that go around the edges, just to help tie everything together and just give some final touches. But you won't see me planting those. These are the blue rushes in the shallow end. I have a bit of aquatic planting soil there. These plants can do well in pretty much any heavy soil, but I got some aquatic soil just in case we needed a little bit extra. And here we're starting to fill up the pond, and it's starting to look like a real pond. We needed to wait to cut the pond liner away until everything was in the pond, because now that it's filling up, the pond liner will actually settle further into the hole, and we don't want to cut it away prematurely, and then it sinks further in, and then you've got water spilling over the edges. And you see those branches sticking out? Those are good for dragonflies or birds or anything else really to sit on, and the dragonflies also lay their eggs in rotting wood near water, so that's why we put those there. And now that the pond is full, we can finally start cutting away the liner. And you might see me putting a little bit of dirt underneath the liner just to stop certain areas from spilling over. And once most of the liner is cut away, you can cover it up using rocks or dirt, or even logs, or really whatever you want. You just want to hide the liner. It's not too pretty, right? Like I said, you see this big dirt area behind the pond and around the edges. I brought in some more plants to help cover that up, and the client actually brought some rocks and logs from his cottage, and we placed those around the edges as well. And we're almost done here. Can't see any of the pond liner anymore. I'm just planting some marsh marigolds around the edges. And we also bring in some Canada anemones and some ferns to plant around the edges as well.
If you have any questions about native plants in Ontario or pond building, you can reach me at 289-943-5477. Thanks.